Hello everyone, my name is Yara, and today I have a vlog for Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. So this vlog was actually recorded almost 2 years ago now. It was one of the last videos I recorded before I took a really long hiatus from this channel. If I didn't upload it already, I will have a video about why I took this hiatus and why I've been gone for so long. But I basically recorded that vlog when the book came out 2 years ago, but I never got around to editing it because I never actually filmed an intro or an outro. And since Train of Thorns came out this past January and I really wanted to talk about it, I really wanted to get this video out, so I thought, why not? Even though it's 2 years late, the information is still relevant. But hence why you are getting a 2 years older Yara doing the intro. So yeah, this book is the second book in the Lost Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare, a part of the larger Shadowhunter Chronicles by Cassandra Clare, which includes things like The Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, these books right here. I have a vlog of Chain of Gold, which is the first book in this series, so if you haven't watched that, go watch that first to get full context. And so without further ado, here is my vlog of Chain of Iron. Hi, hello. We are at 100 pages now, and I thought that was like a decent amount. I was like, wow, I'm only getting into this. But this is so big. This is not even a fourth. Anywho, so much drama has happened, and I read these books for the drama, so I am living my best life. So we start off right before Cordelia and James's wedding. I did not expect to start like the day before the wedding. And most of the young people, like our core young cast, knows what's going on with the situation. Like all the Merry Thieves know and Lucy knows. And I guess they're all just trying to make the best of an odd situation. But of course we also have Matthew, who I live for. I would die for him. That's kind of dramatic, but I love him. And oh my goodness, it breaks my heart. He's trying to be such a good friend to James, but he likes Cordelia too. And he doesn't like that Cordelia has to suffer in the situation. I find it really funny how when we're in Cordelia's perspective, whenever Matthew kind of looks a little bit upset, she's always just like, oh, he's probably just sad for James. It's like, no, girl, he's sad about you. I mean, he could also be sad for James, but he's more sad about the situation, in my opinion. But oh my goodness, there was that scene where Matthew was dropping her off at that tavern place, wherever she meets Anna and Lucy. And she goes to kiss him on the cheek, but then he turns his head and then their lips brush. The moment didn't linger that long, but Cassandra Clare wouldn't have included that moment if it wasn't going to hint at something, you know? Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but I don't know why I ship Matthew and Cordelia now. But to be fair, I kind of always thought they would be cute because he is that person that saved her at that ball right in the beginning of Chain of Gold. So now I'm wondering, is it foreshadowing that they're gonna be endgame? Because the writing seems to be hinting at that. But at the same time, we know that Cordelia is in love with James, and James does love Cordelia. He's just under a spell by Grace right now. So it's not this narrative of like, oh, the first person that you were in love with is maybe not the right person for you. You might find someone who is actually right for you. Like that's maybe how I could imagine the narrative arc going if Matthew and Cordelia were endgame. But it doesn't fit all together, so I'm just left confused. I don't know what's gonna happen. Cassandra Clare might just make Matthew suffer, and I'll be upset. We also have Elias, Cordelia's dad, coming back. And to be honest, I didn't really know what we're gonna expect from this. He does end up kind of making a scene at Cordelia's wedding, which was really unfortunate, and I really felt bad for Cordelia because that was supposed to be a special day, even if it wasn't 100% real. And I also kind of liked how that scene showed Cordelia how Alistair and her mom have been dealing with these kind of situations and how they've dealt with it in the past. And her never really realizing this was the amount of emotional labor they put into keeping their father in check. I think that's going to be a complicated relationship that we're probably going to delve more into. And then of course we have Alistair, who is grumpy as always. It's interesting that Cordelia doesn't know why everyone seems to hate Alistair, but I guess it's true. She was never really a part of all of that. Cordelia ends up learning why the Merry Thieves don't like Alistair, and that also kind of puts her in a tough situation because she loves Alistair, he's her brother, but she also knows that he can be cruel to her, to others. And on top of that, she also knows that he suffered a lot. I hope we get more interactions between Alistair and Cordelia. I really like sibling dynamics, and I love it when they're featured in stories. And I hope we do get more of that with Alistair and Cordelia, but also with all the other bunch of siblings that we have. Ooh, another thing that I noticed. So I remember that on the family tree, it says that Grace Cartwright, Grace Blackthorn, ends up marrying Christopher Lightwood, and that completely took me aback because Christopher is such a sweet boy, and Grace has been this really conniving, evil person. But we get a scene where Christopher comes to get Grace, and nothing really happens in it. It's not that juicy on its own. But I wonder if it's one of those scenes where it's kind of foreshadowing where the relationship is gonna go. We also got in this beginning section more about Grace, and actually from her perspective, especially from the past. And I guess it does make me feel bad for her because Tatiana never really loved her, and how the only person that she really had that she loved and that who loved her was Jesse, and he was taken from her. So not that Grace is like warming up to me, but I'm understanding her a bit more. I'm gonna keep reading and see what goes down. Alrighty, so I'm about halfway through like 300 pages. I have not been doing a very good job of vlogging this. It's actually also a few days after I last vlogged. So many things happened since the last time I updated. I don't even know where to start. I don't know if I talked about it. I might have, but just James and Cordelia being married. Not as weird and awkward as I thought, or as Cordelia thought. It's actually really wholesome and sweet. They're just kind of like best buds, but with these like emotions lying underneath, at least for Cordelia. And also James, which we see in that like hot moment when Cordelia wakes him up when he's having a nightmare. Speaking of those nightmares, I really was thinking this book was gonna go Jekyll and Hyde, and it still might be, I don't really know, because they do literally mention Jekyll and Hyde that they're reading it. And Cassandra Clare likes to pay homage to certain stories that she's drawing inspiration from. And so I think James is the person that is murdering these people, that Belial is controlling him. And I love those kind of storylines. It's also one that is similar to King of Scars. I don't want to spoil that series in this video, but if you've read it, then you know what I'm talking about. I really hope it goes into this whole psychological warfare thing where James is fighting something that's inside of his head. I mean, it already kind of was in terms of Belial just like saying things to him that he knew would get James to react. Now he's literally not in control of his body. Also, Elias is dead. That's really sad. I did not think he was gonna die, and the fact that he died after such a contemptuous interaction with James, and that Cordelia never really got the chance to make amends or reconcile with him, that really broke my heart. And also that conversation that Cordelia and Alistair had, where Alistair is like, I can't even mourn my own father, does that make me a monster? And Cordelia was like, I yelled at the person trying to help me, does that make me a bad person? And they're both just like comforting each other, and I love sibling dynamics. This is just a side note, but it's really hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that James and Cordelia are both 17, but it's just kind of normal that they're married. I mean, I guess, like, this is the turn of the century, 1900s, I guess it's pretty normal. But I don't know, I feel like even Will and Tessa and all them, they waited a little bit more to get married, but I don't remember. Maybe they all got married that young. Now, we don't see too much of Lucy and Jesse, but we did get a very tense moment with them when Jesse reads from Lucy's writing. And he kind of gets insecure because Lucy is writing this very glamorized, very romanticized version of their life and who they are. And then you have that scene where they're both pretty much admitting that they both love each other, but Jesse's like, no, I'm not gonna let you love me. Also, another side thing I just want to talk about is no one knows Lucy's ability, right? Right? This whole time, she's kept it secret. Like, no one knows that she can control the dead, that she can see Jesse. I mean, and obviously that she's working with Grace, no one knows that. That's just wild to me that Lucy has this whole separate life away from her group of friends. For a hot second, don't ask me why, but for a hot second, I thought my prediction was that the solution to the whole Jesse situation was that Jesse's soul or spirit was gonna go into Matthew's body. Then I thought, no, Cassandra Clare would not do that. Matthew, everyone loves Matthew too much. And then I thought maybe she's gonna pull a Rick Riordan in the Kane Chronicles and put the two people into one body. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I just felt the desire to share that prediction with everybody. Speaking of Matthew, there was a little bit of an intervention that Sophie and Henry had with him, basically telling him, like, you are drinking too much. You are out partying too much. Like, this is not healthy, not dealing with your stuff in a healthy way. And instead of taking the criticism, Matthew decides to move into his own apartment. So many of the interactions with Matthew have these just subtle moments that make my heart hurt. Like, there's this moment when him and James are talking where James says, all I want for you, Matt, is that you love yourself as much as I love you. And then when James wants to go visit Matthew in his apartment, Matthew's like, oh, I don't know if Cordelia would want it. And then James goes, she suggested it, she loves you too. And then he did not see Matthew close his eyes and swallow hard. Ugh! Matthew, please. I just want Matthew to be happy. That's just gonna be the motif of this entire Last Hours trilogy. But what I also want, I want there to be this, like, really emotionally intense moment where Matthew just lets it all out. We kind of got a little bit of his attitude and his true feelings towards the situation at the end of Chain of Gold when he's talking to Magnus. But I just want him to be, like, so angry. I want him to, like, flip out. Because I feel like for so long, he's just been drowning his emotions and his feelings, one, in alcohol, and two, just, like, swallowing them down so that other people won't worry about him. And, like, Matthew, no, it's okay that other people are worried about you. What I haven't mentioned so far is that there's that new character, Philomena D'Angelo, and she dies pretty quickly. But her ghost is somehow important to this, and I think she's gonna still be important to this whole thing. Yeah, I really don't know, like, what the purpose of her character is so far. She's kind of seemed pretty, like, in the background, kind of irrelevant. You cannot tell, I am, like, distraught right now. I did such a bad job with this vlog. I really meant to do it periodically so I could update you, not live, but a little bit more, my real-time reactions to these things. But last night I probably got around like 60% of the way through, and I don't even remember what was the last thing I read, but I just knew this morning, I was like, I need to finish this. So after my classes, I just sat and I read, and I really didn't intend to finish it. I was just like, okay, let me read more, because, like, I'm addicted now. But no, I sat for 3 hours and just finished it. I don't even know where to start. There's just so much to talk about. So first, I was wrong. Belial is not controlling James's body, though I should have figured that because James kind of suggested that idea pretty early on, and because it was suggested, it probably wasn't going to be the actual thing. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me that it would be Jesse's body. Like, it makes total sense. He's kind of an empty vessel right now. And the fact that Tatiana was working with Belial, I should have seen it. But what I don't think they explained fully was how James was seeing those visions, because even Belial was like, I'm not making you do that. And at the very end, James kind of hinted like maybe it has something to do with Jesse as opposed to Belial. And that got me thinking that maybe because Jesse's last breath was used to save James, that they're connected in some way. I guess let's talk about Jesse, which surprisingly I feel like we didn't see a lot of in this book. I feel like there was a lot of talk around Jesse because Lucy and, I almost said Charlotte, what's her name? Grace? Lucy and Grace were investigating, trying to figure out how they can get him back. But we actually don't see him very much, which is kind of sad because I was kind of, I don't want to say losing interest, but I wasn't as invested in Lucy and Jesse's relationship as I was in everybody else's. Speaking of Lucy and Grace's investigations, I didn't expect that Anna and Ariadne would get involved, but I kind of liked that because it was really bothering me that no one knew what Lucy was up to. And so at least at the end, Anna could provide some sort of insight, even if they don't know the whole story, to like figure out the whole picture and what's going on. And then speaking of Anna and Ariadne, I didn't really mention this in the previous updates, but I didn't expect to get perspective chapters from them either. especially Ariadne, because we barely saw her in Chain of Gold. And while they were brief, I really liked how we were able to delve more into their characters and their relationship, though it is another one of many of the Cassandra and Claire relationships where they just cause pain. No one is happy. Both of them are never going to be happy, I guess, or they won't let themselves be happy. I'm trying to have some sort of logic to this, but I'm kind of just jumping around to whatever idea I think of next. So now I was thinking about all the stuff we learn about Grace's childhood. To be honest, a lot of it we kind of already figured out, even if we didn't get it from her perspective. But I think because we saw a little bit more from her perspective, I felt for her a little bit, just a little bit. Especially in her desire to get Jessie back. What I think those flashbacks did a really good job of was showing how she was growing up in this abusive household and how Jessie was that only source of joy that she had. And at the end of the day, she was a victim of abuse, and so a lot of the things that we really hate her for, especially in regards of what she did to James, she was doing it because she was being forced by her mother. And at the time, she was only 14 too. It doesn't really excuse it, but I do understand a little bit more where she's coming from. Though I do wish she was a bit more apologetic about it. And that kind of leads into that last altercation in the end. The end is just a whole thing that we need to digest. But Grace finally tells James what's going on with the bracelet. And oh my god, I feel like I mentioned it in my Chain of Gold vlog that it was just so sad that James had his life being controlled for that long, that he wasn't in control of himself for all that time. And so I was so happy that that was like the cornerstone of that altercation, was him talking about how painful that is to know that so much of his life has been stolen now, that he wasn't able to be a good friend, to be a good husband, to treat the people that he loves with respect because of this action that Grace did to him. And that's why my feelings towards Grace are still a little bit conflicted, because yes, I understand what kind of position she was put in the first place, but this is not something you can just brush off, and I don't know if James could brush off, though I'm sure it will. Grace is gonna come back to the side. She's gonna help them. Oh, and they definitely are hinting towards the Grace and Christopher relationship when she goes to see him while he's working in the lab, and they kind of just have a very natural conversation. I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of cute, especially when Christopher was like, it was so easy talking to her that she was genuinely interested in what he had to say and wasn't just like listening for the sake of listening and not really being interested like a lot of his friends did. But I don't know how their group of friends is going to reconcile everything. But I mean, we did kind of have that discussion with Thomas and Alistair. First of all, the moment that Alistair walked into that room to give an alibi to Thomas, I was like, I know where this is going. They were gonna be put in the cell together, and they were going to be forced to speak to each other. And they kind of had this moment where they could truly be with each other. But then Alistair is just like, I'm not going to make you choose between your friends and me, so I'm going to make that choice. You go with your friends. And that hurt, not going to lie. Also, can we just talk about Matthew and Cordelia? Because this book gave us a lot of substance, very small, subtle substance, but I was looking for it. And I saw it. So first we have that day where Matthew takes Cordelia to go see Waylon the Smith and to kind of cheer her up after her dad dies. And again, similar to the being in the same prison cell trope, I was like, this is the time. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to get to know each other. They're going to understand each other better. And I was right, especially in that time where they were sitting in that cafe. Like, they knew how to dig deep into each other without pushing too far. I don't remember if it was this time or earlier when Matthew was like, I know that you're in love with James, even though this marriage is a sham. And then she kind of asked him questions about why he's so sad. Oh yeah, that was before the trip when she learns about what Matthew did when he went to the shadow market and caused his mother to miscarry. But she also asks him things about the fact that he kind of chooses love that only leads to heartbreak, like with that guy from the tavern place. And then with Lucy, that part was kind of funny, where he was like, does everyone know that I liked Lucy? That was funny. Anyway, and just the subtle ways that Matthew kind of reveals that he loves her. Ugh, my heart. And on that same trip, Cordelia ties herself to Waylon the Smith and becomes his paladin, which we later learned was actually Lilith, and now Cordelia is paladin for Lilith. I felt so bad for her. I knew something was sketchy about that. I don't know why, it just seemed kind of easy. I was like, this feels too simple. I didn't expect that the Magnus that we saw was not actually Magnus. That was a twist. But yeah, it just breaks my heart in the end because she's like, I can't be Parabatai with Lucy anymore. I can't even fight because whenever I fight, I'm going to be drawing upon Lilith. Anyway, going back to the Matthew and Cordelia thing, there's just a lot of things that Matthew would say that just would break my heart. There was this scene where Matthew and James had a fight, and it was almost kind of what I wanted and what I alluded to in the past update, where I was like, I want Matthew to just lose it. Oh my god, it's getting really dark now. Oops. Okay, now there's some light. It was when Matthew found out that James had not only seen Grace, but kissed her in the same house as Cordelia. And Matthew pretty much yells at him because he's like, how could you do that to Cordelia? And he also pretty much is trying to tell James that like he doesn't understand why he likes Grace so much. Grace only brings him pain. And he says this quote that I really liked, where there is joy in being with someone you love, even knowing you can never have them, even knowing that they will never love you back. Literally, I had to stop and I was like, Matthew, please, you're breaking my heart. Because he's obviously talking about how he feels when he's with Cordelia, even though he knows that she's in love with James. I'm honestly really sad that Matthew didn't learn about what Grace did to James in this book. I mean, obviously, we're gonna learn in the next book, and James is gonna tell him. Because I feel like even James understands why everyone was just so frustrated with him, especially Matthew. But hopefully now Matthew can understand that he was being tricked. He was being magically manipulated. And it again broke my heart when Cordelia saw James hugging Grace after everything that happened, after all the clear signs that James was still in love with her, how his love for Cordelia literally broke the chain that was binding him to Grace. And Grace even mentioned, she's like, at least this is a testament to how much you love her. But Cordelia wasn't there for the whole explanation, and I knew she was gonna run to Matthew because her and Matthew kind of have an understanding that no one else has. I mean, James and Matthew are Parabatai, so they kind of know each other the best, but I feel like they've revealed things to each other that they haven't revealed to anybody else. And so it makes sense that she wants to seek comfort with him. And then Matthew reveals that he loves her and that he's been trying to hide it, and Cordelia is just like, well. And then they make the plan to go to Paris together just to kind of make them feel better. But then, of course, the most dramatic scene at the end where they're literally getting on the train and James is about to stop them, but then Will stops him and tells them they gotta go save Lucy. I just want them to have that communication, want them to all talk it out and understand each other. But I know that even that, not everyone is gonna end up happy, and that just makes me so upset. So I made it very clear that this entire vlog that I love Matthew. And I do ship him with Cordelia, but I also ship James and Cordelia. And I feel like I'm usually pretty good at figuring out what the end game relationship is gonna be. And I think I know what it's gonna be for this one. I'm pretty sure James and Cordelia are gonna be endgame. But I feel like the story was so close to hinting that Cordelia and Matthew were gonna be at least romantically related at some point. And they might be in, is the next one Chain of Thorns? Whatever the next one is. Because of that foreshadowing I mentioned, with him being the one that kind of saves her when James goes off to Grace at the first time at the ball. Them being the ones to share kind of their darkest feelings and secrets with each other. But at the same time, James and Cordelia have much stronger chemistry. And they also have a history. They were each other's first love, and I don't know if Matthew can compete with that. I just really don't know what's gonna happen with Matthew, because at least in the Infernal Devices, Jem became a silent brother. I don't see that fate for Matthew. I'm so scared that he's gonna die. Part of me feels like he might, but part of me feels like he's too loved to die. You know, now that I think about it, there's really not one relationship that isn't suffering right now. Like, I feel like even in the Infernal Devices, even though like our core trio was suffering a lot, A lot of the side ones that developed, like Cecily and Gabriel, Sophie and Gideon, Charlotte and Henry, were pretty much like stable. They had the normal kind of development that you would see. But all the ones here literally have no peace. Everyone is just sad. Oh, I forgot to say that at the very end, Jessie comes back to life. But at what cost? We don't know. Lucy kind of blacks out and then we don't see what happens from there. Apparently there are a lot of spoilers for the Dark Artifices in terms of Malcolm Fade and Annabelle Blackthorn that we learn in this book. I haven't read them, so I don't really know, but I guess I'm spoiled now. I did intend on reading them, but I always hesitated because I heard that the second 2 books are not as good as Lady Midnight. But I don't know, I feel like I'm more interested in the Blackthorn family now. But yeah, I guess I avoided all my responsibilities today to finish this book, and now I'm emotionally distraught and will continue to avoid my responsibilities. I mean, I actually have to get things done now. This was kind of my release, being able to talk about it.
Hi, hello, this is many days after I finished the book, but I just had some more thoughts. Question, did James and Cordelia ever do the second wedding rune? Frankly, I don't remember, but if they did not, then my theory is that they're gonna do that in Chain of Thorns, because whenever all of this settles down and everyone finally realizes the truth and James and Cordelia can finally be happy, they're gonna put the private wedding runes on each other so that it's like they can get married for real, even though that their first marriage was a sham. And it's gonna be really emotional and really sweet and also super powerful, because I don't think we've really seen that part of the wedding in a Shadowhunters book. I haven't read all the Shadowhunters books, so I shouldn't be claiming anything about all the Shadowhunters books. But I think that would be really sweet, and I would want for that to happen. Unless they did already do that and I forgot, but it's fine. Also, I just want to say that I feel like I was very much Matthew oriented in this whole vlog, which is kind of true because I just love Matthew. But I do like James and Cordelia. Like, I like them together, I swear. I think it's just because there is just so much James and Cordelia thrown at us that I was like, let me see, like, what's going on with Matthew? I guess speaking of Matthew, more thoughts I have. I feel like there wasn't that many Matthew POV scenes in this book. Were there any? And it's weird because Cassie Clare includes like so many POVs, even if it's just for like a brief section of a chapter. Like Christopher got a POV scene. And I guess as a narrative technique, it makes sense because Matthew's whole character is kind of predicated on this idea that we don't really know what's wrong with him or why he's feeling the way he feels. Or not that we don't know, because we know, but it's always like in the point of view of someone else's character. Like we see his feelings through the eyes of Cordelia or James. And because we have some knowledge of what's going on or what went wrong in his life, we can put all the pieces together. But I think in this book specifically, we were kind of just not in his head. Like we didn't know that he moved out until we witnessed him having the fight with his mom through James's perspective, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's just a narrative strategy for us to be more curious about what's going on with Matthew. I just find it odd because he's one of the central characters and he didn't have many POV scenes in this sequel. I also feel like there wasn't that much of the older Shadowhunter gang in this book. And I guess maybe that was the case in the last book. Again, I don't remember that much, especially because I was so focused on what was happening with the teen crew. And it honestly makes a little bit more sense in this series where we don't really follow the adult characters, because literally James and Cordelia are married. They're like established adults now, so they can really just go off on their own adventures. But I don't know, I wanted there to be more of a presence, especially because like Will and Tessa were not even in the town for half of this book. We see Charlotte a few times, and then we saw like Gideon because Thomas got arrested. And then at the very end, we get like a Tessa and Will perspective scene when Jessamine tells them what's going on with Lucy. But I don't know, I just want them to be more involved. One, because I love them and I miss them as characters. But also, I don't know, I just think it'd be fun to see them have to interact with their parents. Anyways, that is all for the thoughts that I just had and I needed to talk about.
Alright, so that is my vlog of Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. As you can tell, I had many thoughts, many an emotion to go through with this reading experience. Please let me know what you thought of this book, if you had any similar reactions or any dissimilar reactions to what happened. I'll be back with another video about Chain of Thorns. As of this point, I have read it, and I have, again, many a thought, many an emotion to express about it. So I'm excited to get to that and kind of finish this trilogy for my channel. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.